Now, we were talking about when we started the day with John Hayes, who had been a CMO of American Express for 15 years. Arthur has been at the helm of the New York Times for 13 years. He's been with the Times, obviously, for a lot longer than that, but he's been chairman for 13 years. So he, too, has been through multiple cycles with the internet and with technology. And I think it's fair to say that the New York Times has managed to be a very important innovator in this space, even as its entire industry has been declared dead for a decade or more. And so we're going to have a conversation about what it means to be a premium publisher and a journalist in this space. Please join me in welcoming Arthur Sulzberger, Jr. Welcome.
Oh, just wait out the evening.
Thank you. We're going to get our drops a little bit more specific there.
You didn't want to go with Leonard Cohen, huh?
We could have done Leonard Cohen. I'll add that to the playlist. Always a good idea. Now, let's start with this whole paywall thing.
We call it the metered model.
I just think you must have paid somebody a lot of money to come up with metered model.
No, actually,
It sort of sounds like a utility.
well, we'll be happy to take a different approach to the name if you come up with a better idea.
No, I like metered. I think
Right,
metered is
yeah.
good.
And I think metered actually expresses the thought, which is that as you come to our website, there will be a certain number of page views that you will get before you are asked to pay.
And have you done user testing about this?
Yeah.
No, you're just going to be like Google and launch it and see what happens. I think that was a joke. It must be. Cocktails in half an hour.
These guys are brain dead. It's been a long conference, and I know
But
that.
I mean, but, you
And,
know,
we're all that stands between you and what? Beer, mimosas? You tell me.
Well, whatever they want, they get.
So the thought is, look, we believe that we would all agree that digital is the future, longer term, and that we need to have more than a single revenue stream to support our enterprise, and thus, if you will, a version of a circulation revenue stream. Not one that takes us out of the interlinking nature of the web. In other words, we don't want to get rid of search as valuable to us, so we want to make sure this is a thought-out and thoughtful look at the one that also allows for flexibility and adaptation.
The Google spiders will not hit a paywall. In other words,
define spider.
Well, in other words, Google can go search your content forever and ever, and they're not going to get stuck behind in front of a paywall.
And if people link to a New York Times article and send it to their friends, people will be able to follow the link back.
Can I go in a rabbit hole for a second?
Sure.
So what happens if I've gone, is it 5 or 6 or 7
We haven't made that decision.
But somebody sends me a link on Facebook and then I follow it, but can I clear my cookies and start over? You're going to be responsible for the greatest act of cookie deletion in the history of the internet. How do you feel about that, sir?
I'm more of a muffin guy myself. So, look, are there ways to steal? Well, yeah. You can go to a newsstand now, and probably as you pass it, you can pull a copy of the paper off and run onto a bus. Okay, so let's agree that this is not going to get rid of theft.
In other words, if I hit clear cookies because I want, well, anyways.
Okay, but the point is, we're going to make some assumptions here that people, on the whole, are decent and honorable, and we're going to build a system to that end. Okay, so there are undoubtedly going to be ways to get around it. Welcome to the technology of our time.
Right.
We believe that our loyalists, the people who really are engaged with New York Times journalists, and there's an enormous number of those people, are going to support this, because I think they'll believe in it. And we're going to make it easy, and that's why it's taking us so long to get from announcing it to launching it, because there's a lot of work to be done to integrate our systems.
In particular, given how fragmented this market is, for example, I am a loyal New York Times subscriber on the Kindle.
Bless you for that.
And Gesundheit. And the reason I'm a subscriber on the Kindle is because the Kindle is sort of my travel companion.
Okay.
And,
Yeah,
and
it's a good
I did not want to stick the even though I worked at a print paper the other times.
I'm a Kindle subscriber
The LA
too.
Times a while ago. I stopped my subscription to the New York Times basically, number one, because I could read it on the web.
Right.
Thanks to you and Martin Nisenholtz and others.
Who was
And-
in the audience?
Oh, Martin?
Martin.
Hi, Martin.
Martin, can you say
There he is.
hello?
Hey, Martin. And number two, because I just didn't like my hands getting dirty, and it's another thing in my bag. But now I've got the Kindle, and so now I'm a subscriber again. And I'm assuming
You know, we did solve that ink rub-off problem. I just want you to know that.
I miss that. I miss that technology. I completely missed it. Am I going to be able to, for example, connect my Kindle to this new metered approach?
Those are the kinds of things we are absolutely working through right now, and a lot
Because
depends.
nothing makes me angrier than paying 4 times for the same thing, which is kind of the carrier problem you have, right? Every device, you've got yet another
And this is-
$30 a month
yeah.
that you've got to.
And this is one of the challenges we face, and we face it with the iPad when we move to pay on the iPad as we plan to do.
But it's free right now.
It is free right now. Get used to it.
You're following the free, aren't you? In other words, you're getting to scale, and then you're going to make them pay. Kind of the drug dealer model.
That was we were joking backstage. This is the drug dealer model. You know, we just here have a little heroin. It's on me for the first few hits.
Is that what Paul Krugman's doing?
But no, it's not it. We do. We are
you
working
are.
to adapt the web to pay, and we didn't want to put up a web app on the same device, a free web
Right.
and a paid. We're going to move in conjunction with each other.
So your iPad application is doing well.
Our iPad is doing well.
You're going to
yes.
give us some statistics?
Statistics. I only have a few statistics. So far, 350,000 downloads on the iPad app. Is that still right, Martin? It's a little bit higher than
Today it's 375.
Yeah,
Tomorrow
exactly.
it's 450. It's
that.
growing
It is.
rapidly.
It really is.
And
It's
and
wonderful.
so there would be no, I would say, no publisher on earth who wouldn't love to have closing in on 500,000 new
and with
advertising customers.
And with advertising support. I think it's Chanel that was the advertiser on the iPad. Is that right, Martin? Chase initially and Chanel now. So look, the iPad is
Did
an
they
exciting
pay a
device.
premium price for those advertisements?
If you have to ask, you can't advertise with us. It's and
I'm sorry.
you simply can't afford it, man.
It's a premium brand indeed. Okay, boy, I'm all over the place here. I want to let me pull back and ask you about Rupert Murdoch. There's a grounding concept right there. Our friend Mr. Murdoch.
Indeed.
Besides the fact that he seems to like your advertising slogans, in that you had a little tiff over that. Did he cease and desist and relent on that?
Yes,
You did.
basically they, for those not in the know, we had an ad slogan that we had put out prior to the journal launching their New York section, and they recently actually took the slogan and used it themselves, and quite frankly, we were flattered. And if they're going to steal, they should steal from the best, and they did, but it's still theft. So we sent a cease.
You heard it here on the stage.
We sent a cease and desist
Arthur
letter.
Sulzberger just called Rupert Murdoch a thief.
Oh my goodness. I don't. If I went that far, my apologies.
But we have kind of here in New York an old-fashioned newspaper war with digital kind of trappings, don't we?
To a certain degree, but to less of a degree than I think most people think. I mean, at the end of the day, the New York Times is about our brand promise. It's about the quality of our journalism across multiple spheres, from New York and sports to culture and arts to science and technology to national and international, and I could keep going, but you guys have a drink to look forward to. But the point I'm trying to make is our mission, our commitment is to keep to our brand promise. And this is the driving thought as we move to the digital age future. How do we do so in a way that maintains the brand promise that has attracted so many people to us for so long and keep that commitment? And that's what we're engaged in doing. Now, Does this mean that we aren't paying it? No, of course we're paying attention to our competitors, whether it's the Wall Street Journal, who has always been a great competitor, or the Washington Post, or more recently, BBC and the other competitors. I think Ariana Huffington is going to be speaking
She has
to
your
you next
slot
year.
tomorrow.
I mean, these are people who are doing exciting and things that we are very much focused on, learning from and adapting as we make this adaptation. So to us, it's less a war with any single person and more, how do we fulfill our brand promise as we make the most critical transition this enterprise has ever undertaken?
Now, let's talk about the journalism. I have something of a dog in this fight, or maybe thousands of them, both at Federated and also as a journalist and even as an academic for a 4-year period of time. I'm deeply interested in journalism continuing.
So am I.
I imagine you are. It strikes me that we may be turning a corner on models to pay for that. It's an expensive pursuit, but in the last, call it 6 months, besides rise of sort of sites like the Huffington Post, which have journalism in there with a lot of other things, the launch of the iPad and the associated excitement around that as a distribution channel, the rise of mobile generally and then its seemingly cultural shift around the concept of paying for digital objects through Kindle and then iPad and others. Do you feel more optimistic about getting the business model that allows you to have 4 people for 10 months in some remote Asian country doing investigative journalism that costs $150,000 for the whole time? That is very expensive business.
$150,000 is cheap.
It's cheap, right?
I mean, let's talk about the wall we had to build around our Baghdad bureau. I mean, we've spent
Don't
more
forget the
on
roof.
security than you could. I mean, no, a berm.
Yeah.
So no, this is very expensive, and as we're involved in wars and in increasingly dangerous situations around the world, it is very expensive. But that's our commitment. We will cover these things because increasingly fewer people are. So, to your question, sure, the iPad and other devices, the Kindle before it, Sony, other devices that are coming on, all give us a sense that we now can move to a reading experience, which is a lean-back experience, and I think everyone in this audience knows what I mean by that, that allows people to not only go to the information they know they want, but to have an experience that allows them to find the information they didn't know they wanted until they finally came across it, the way you used to be able to do in printed pages, when all of a sudden the article that had caught your eye was opposite an article that now really focused you. I mean, so you went to one because you knew it was there, you went to the other because you found it. So these are exciting devices, and it does mean that that lean back experience allows people to read more like this. Unless, so yes, this
I'm
is
still using a clipboard. I'm not using an iPad.
It's very
yet.
cute. It's very quaint.
Yes.
Yes, right.
That's me. I'm pretty analog. So let me ask you, along the lines of journalism, there's been a discussion/debate in the last month or so about what have been called content farms and page view journalism. Not necessarily related, but I'd say related in that some esteemed journalists have said that both those things are sort of generally negative developments. One is page view journalism of sort of sensationalism or trying to get a lot of page views and not really being too concerned about the facts, or at least being more sensational in nature. And the second, which by the way isn't a new idea
No.
in journalism.
No, it's not.
And secondly, the rise of companies that have that create content that is not necessarily, and I listened to Richard Rosenblatt, and we'll have Joanne from Demand here tomorrow. Really make a case for this content may be called journalism and it's service journalism, but we're not trying to go report wars in Iraq.
Right.
So what do you make of those two forms of journalism?
Well, let's agree, and I think there historically there have always been journalistic organizations that have gone for the mass appeal and then journalistic organizations that have always gone for the quality audience. And the New York Times is a quality audience. Although, we also have mass appeal. We're the 5th largest news site in the world. But Martin's going to correct me if this is wrong. Martin, was it last year that the most emailed article we wrote was the one, or was it 2 years ago, how to train your husband the way you train your pet? I think it was last year. And by God, there is room for that. Shamu, exactly. Today's most emailed article, I believe, was our front page piece on the distraction of all the devices, which, by the way, if you folks haven't read this yet, I really commend this piece to you, about how all of us are so...
Read it right now while you're listening to him.
Quite frankly, it's a lot more interesting than me. It's a really compelling piece, and we have to have room for both. We won a Pulitzer Prize this year for our articles on distracted driving and how dangerous it is to text while you're driving and to even talk on the telephone while you're driving. And that was a major series, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. Now, is it critical we also cover state government? Is it critical that we also cover city government? Is it critical that we have reporters in Iraq and Afghanistan? There's no question about that. Because otherwise, quite frankly, how do you know when you walk into the voting booth how to vote on an issue, how to vote on a person? We've got to have that. That's core to democracy. But it's not what we do solely. And so there's got to be room for all of that.
What do you make of these sort of hyper-local movement, as it were? I mean, AOL bought Patch.
Exactly, and you've got Tim Armstrong tomorrow,
Tim is coming
right?
tomorrow,
Great.
absolutely. And, they've got their own version of sort of associated content with Seed. Seed, Patch, Harvest, there's something going on there.
It's a farming thing.
It's a farming thing. Farmville integration, and then we're done. Call it a day. But, the New York Times is, in fact, one of the first to embrace blogs and to embrace sort of local blogs. How is that effort going?
It's going okay, and more recently we've done something very exciting. We are partnering with journalism institutions, whether it's CUNY School of Journalism, which Steve Shepard runs, or NYU or others, to help also use those resources in terms of local, hyper-local coverage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're partnering with my pal Jonathan Weber over at Bay Citizen.
Right.
I'm very pleased to.
Exactly right. So we're in an amazing environment of testing and learning, and testing and learning, and testing and learning. And in the old days, testing and learning was expensive, because to test, you had to build a factory, and you had to put in fancy presses, and you had to do all this other nonsense. And today, it's not expensive. It's easy, and as long as you keep your mind open to the flexible to the possibilities, both up and down, if you're not occasionally failing, you're not trying hard enough. So we are going to continue to test and learn and see what do people want from our brand. And how, we know they want national, we know they want international. How local do they really want the New York Times to be? Right. I mean, is it San Francisco section, a la what we're talking about, or Chicago, which is also something we're doing? Or is it, these 5 blocks in Brooklyn? And what makes sense?
Right. I remember a great conversation I had with Martin a year and a half, maybe even longer ago, where he said, the New York Times doesn't have the brand permission to do that. And I forget what that was. It was probably a lot of that. But, for example, I think about the My Town, About Town app that you're doing with the Foursquare About Town, where, you're suggesting places that you can go and stuff like that.
Right, and we just put out another one for the iPad today. Was it Friday it was approved, Scoop? For the iPhone, sorry, not the iPad, the iPhone, right.
And do you feel like the New York Times is getting more permission to do things in this environment than it had before from its brand advocates,
I think the answer has to be yes. And it has to be yes for 2 reasons. One, because these are not times which allow us to be stable. and shame on us if we don't make use of this challenging period we're all in the media industry to push the envelopes. And again, to my point, when we do something that doesn't work, we can easily stop it or adjust it or adapt it and learn and move on. A la the last time we tried pay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Time Select.
I thought we were going to get there, so I thought I'd scoop you on that one. Which is...
So how was Time Select?
Time Select rocked. But and by that, I don't mean it was Stone Age. Time Select, I assume most people here know, but it was we put our opinion writers, both on the op-ed page and in some of the news pages, our columnists, and some of the news pages behind a paywall, and it grew very quickly. It was profitable very quickly, but it was at a point in our history, the global history, where internet digital advertising was just skyrocketing. And it became clear early on that there were problems that we had not fully addressed. The interface was less than what we would have liked, and we took it down. And that was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to try it. It was the right thing to learn from it. It was the right thing to take it down. And that's the mindset that we have to be in this institution, in this time in our history.
Let me ask you, as a, I guess, representative of premium brand, premium content, a publisher in the space, as you said, with an elite or a high-end audience, anyways. What you make of ad exchanges, demand-side platforms, and the sort of frenzy that's happened in our industry in the last year around, essentially treating inventory
right.
as a fungible, real-time asset that gets bid on,
Right.
in almost a stock market-like
Exactly.
scenario.
Oh, well, let's start with this thought. Not all organizations are created the same. Not all newspapers have the same purpose, have the same audience. And so we can't, I really think what's critical here is the idea that there's one answer for all of the media is just shallow. It's shallow thinking. The New York Times, we don't use ad exchanges anymore. We did for a while. But look, we're blessed. 80% of our print advertisers, as related by volume, 80% advertise on our website.
But isn't the print number kind of small anyways?
No.
Just kidding.
And yeah, that was cute. Can somebody get me a drink? And so we're blessed. We have a quality. For the New York Times in print, for the New York Times on the web, for the New York Times on devices, it's the same system.
So you don't
quality journalism attracts a quality audience that we in turn sell to quality advertisers.
But so you don't use any ad networks?
We don't use at the New York Times. We don't. But
right. I mean,
in
you have a
other
lot of other properties, and
we
yeah.
do, because
right.
the answer for the Sarasota Herald Tribune or About.com won't be the same answer as that for the New York Times, and we have to be comfortable, and indeed are, with that fact.
Yeah, and so actually I should ask you, and sometimes I get sort of bedazzled by the New York Times brand, and I forget how many other brands that you have, and one of your most successful acquisitions over the past 10 years was About.com.
Absolutely right, yes.
And About.com, if I may be so bold as to suggest, is sort of demand media 1.0, isn't it?
I'd like to think at least 2.0, but that's...
but in other words, it's very specific content that is driven by search engine optimization
right.
and does really well with Google ads.
That's right.
Right?
No question about it.
And that's very much what Demand or Associated or Seed or others do as well.
That's right.
Although each have different variations, as does About, because you've got the guides and the...
That's the biggest difference. We have the guides. So
and is that still doing very well
That
for you?
is still doing exceptionally well. And I must say that of all of the arms of our company that that had all a rough time in the last year and a half, About by far outperformed anybody else in terms of their success. Yeah, it was good to hear.
Now, let me, please, guys, if you have questions, come up to the mics, and our mic runners can kind of get, because it's hard to see you, so just wave your hand if you have a question. I want to ask you, before we get to those questions, about iAds, because it's the topic du jour, and in particular, maybe even pull back more about mobile advertising.
Right.
You told me backstage 81 million page views across the New York Times properties
Right.
in mobile
No,
alone.
I think that's just the New York
Just
Times.
the New York Times?
81 million, just the New York Times.
And you're selling that direct yourself, your own sales channel, selling
Right.
those mobile ads direct, but you refuse to tell me how much you're selling it for.
Well,
But
you're right.
that is
But-
a new market for you.
It's a new market for the world.
Would you consider running ad networks there, like iAds or AdMob? Omar was just here. Or is it you're going to take the same approach?
Actually, it's a very good question, and if there is a mic, can I ask Martin to answer that, Martin?
You've been recruited.
You've been recruited. I did warn Martin that throw this to him at least once.
I think for now, our position with respect to Times branded content is that we're going to be selling it directly. We do have a relationship with Google outside of the exchange for
Right.
the long tail, right? So that's not blind. That's, you can come in and you can buy Times inventory through AdSense, but there's a significant block list, of course.
Right. Right.
But one of the things we've learned is that we have the best relationship with our advertisers, print and digital, that anyone has. We long ago integrated our ad department, so we have one-stop shopping. We have this R&D lab, which I think you've seen, which we bring advertisers through regularly to show them where we believe the future's going and how they need to think about adapting to that world and helping them to do that. And that's one of the reasons I think that we've decided, look, if it's a New York Times brand, we have the relationship with the advertiser, we have the experience in helping them move to these new models, and we're going to utilize that.
Great. We have a question here.
Hi, Megan Tweed, Media Director at Razorfish. You seem to be dependent upon your current readership to support this paid model, right, at launch, and that makes sense. There are a lot of young people, though, that haven't grown up reading the New York Times, and they're not going to have a chance to interact with the newspaper, perhaps, because they're not print readers, but they are reading content online. How are you going to attract these new, younger readers? How are you going to turn around and promote yourselves differently to these people when you turn to this paid model? Are you going to put some content out there, snack-sized bites for people to actually get hooked on it and want to pay for it?
Well, this is why we keep on referring to it as a metered model, because people will have a chance to go to the site and read a certain number of pages. We, again, have not decided how many articles that will be, or articles/blogs, free. And we also are going to keep the social networks open. So,
What does that mean when you say they keep the social networks open?
well, in other words, if somebody is sent a link to a New York Times article,
All right.
they can
Right.
open the link. And we have this, maybe we're stuck with the vision that 12-year-olds always read the New York Times in print. And that's just, nonsense. And we're talking 40 years ago. That's nonsense. People come to the quality news and information when they need it. And often it's when they buy their first home. Often it's when they're sending their kids to school. Often it's when they have a job where all of a sudden it depends on them being aware of what's happening in the world to make their job work. So the New York Times is not a mass and never has been mass. And there's always been a bit of a gap. That said, we are the largest circulated newspaper on college campuses in the United States. That hasn't changed. And we are going to continue to integrate ourselves into education. Absolutely. And with the digital age, we will find new ways to integrate our news and information into education. That's a critical component.
I was trying to get you to talk about your social strategy, too. I think that's huge for finding new readers and sharing out your content and getting people to come. And
I couldn't agree with you more, which is why we've been so aggressive aggressive is unfair, but so open in our relationship with Facebook, and we've done so much there, or Twitter. Because we actually have one editor at the New York Times who is only responsible for social interaction. How do we make sure that our journalism is more available through social media? So this is, and that's in the newsroom. We do even more, of course, on the business side as we focus on these things. So this is why I'm trying to remember what the numbers are, and I have to look. But it's what was 7 million. What do I have here? 7 million followers across Twitter and other feeds. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a good start.
You got Ashton Kutcher beat.
There you go.
You got a question up here?
Does this mean we declare victory and go home?
That's it. We're done.
We have 1 second before the drinks.
Well, we'll let this fellow get a question.
In that final second, Smokey Fontaine, head of programming for Interactive One. Kind of two parts. What's your feeling about how to maintain and/or execute your brand promise online? You know, do you feel consumers have a different relationship with your brand online versus off? And secondly, what's your feeling towards the kind of news aggregators? You spoke about it a little, but AOL News, Yahoo News, Google News, that of course really don't care about the brand that they're putting forth with the immense traffic they get.
So let's reverse it a little bit. News aggregators. Look, I have no problem with news aggregators who link, who put our, say, this story is appearing on nytimes.com and give a link that sends people to the nytimes.com. That's fabulous. There is, at some point, if you're stealing the entire story, I got a problem there, and that's something we've all been grappling with in the media and news space.
Now that's very distinct from what Mr. Murdoch has said, which is basically headlines and a snippet and a link is theft.
I don't agree with that. I mean, look, welcome to the social media world. And so, I think you may have had discussions about this, but search has driven the digital age for so long. And I think many of us would say that while that search is obviously going to continue, it's going to become a less and less important part of the digital age. And social media is going to be, and how we link to each other and to friends. And there'll be fewer and fewer people who type in holiday vacation Caribbean into a search engine, and more who say, I want to go to the Caribbean on a vacation. Who can help me with this?
Right.
We need to be part of that dialogue. We need to be part of that discussion, and we will be. We will be. So we need to find that right balance, but we're not going to pull ourselves out of that.
So what you're saying is, like many of the brands that are represented in this room, the New York Times is also having to join the conversation and change what its brand is and how
Absolutely.
It responds to this.
Has to join the conversation and has to be in a position where we are part of a conversation that happens between our consumers and each other, our customers, our readers, and each other, and we know that.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking Arthur for a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.